Picture this: someone you care about vanishes without a trace. No goodbye, no explanation, no closure. Just silence that stretches on like an endless void. They don't disappear physically, they're still posting on social media, still living their life. But to you, they might as well be dead. This is ghosting, and it's become the cruelest form of modern communication. Or should I say, the cruelest form of modern non communication. Here's what makes ghosting so devastating: it's not just rejection, it's erasure. When someone ghosts you, they're not just saying they don't want to talk to you anymore. They're saying you don't deserve an explanation. You don't deserve closure. You don't even deserve acknowledgement that you existed in their life at all. It's psychological warfare disguised as convenience. But here's the twist that most people miss: ghosting isn't actually about you. It's a language all its own, and once you learn to decode it, everything changes. The silence starts speaking volumes. The absence becomes a presence. And suddenly, you realize that the person who ghosted you has told you more about themselves than they ever did with words. In this deep dive, I'm going to reveal the hidden psychology behind ghosting behavior, decode the different types of ghosters and what drives them, and show you how to read the signs before someone vanishes from your life. We'll explore the three phases of ghosting that every victim experiences, examine real case studies of ghosting patterns, and most importantly, I'll give you the tools to protect yourself from ever being caught off guard again. But first, let me share something that might surprise you. I've spent over 2 years researching this phenomenon, interviewing hundreds of people who've been ghosted and even speaking with admitted ghosters about their motivations. What I discovered will change how you view every relationship in your life. The thing about ghosting is that it follows patterns, predictable, measurable patterns. And once you understand these patterns, you gain something powerful: the ability to see it coming before it happens. More than that, you gain the ability to understand what the ghoster is really trying to communicate through their silence. Let's start with the fundamental truth that nobody talks about. Ghosting is a form of communication. It's just not the kind we're used to. When someone ghosts you, they're speaking a language of avoidance, fear, and self preservation. They're telling you exactly who they are without saying a word. The problem is, most of us don't know how to listen to silence. Think about the last time someone ghosted you. What did you do? You probably sent follow up messages. You checked their social media obsessively. You analyzed your last conversation for clues about what went wrong. You turned yourself inside out trying to understand what you did to deserve the silence. But here's what you missed: the ghosting itself was the message. Every ghost leaves breadcrumbs, digital footprints that reveal their true intentions, the timing of their last message, the way they phrase their final words, the platforms they stay active on while ignoring you. These aren't accidents, they're signals. And learning to read these signals is like having a superpower in the modern dating world. Consider this scenario. You've been texting someone for weeks. The conversation flows naturally. You make plans. Everything seems great. Then suddenly, radio silence. Your first instinct is to wonder what you did wrong. But what if I told you that in most cases, the decision to ghost was made before your last conversation even happened? What if the signs were there all along, hidden in plain sight? The language of ghosting operates on multiple levels. There's the surface level, the obvious absence of communication. But beneath that lies a complex web of psychological motivations, emotional triggers, and behavioral patterns that reveal far more than any conversation ever could. When someone ghosts you, they're not just avoiding a difficult conversation, they're showing you their coping mechanisms, their conflict resolution style, their emotional intelligence, and their capacity for empathy all at once. Here's something fascinating. Ghosters often follow the same playbook without realizing it. They exhibit similar behaviors in the days leading up to the disappearance. They use similar excuse patterns when they do resurface. They even choose similar times to vanish. It's like they're all reading from the same invisible script. But not all ghosting is created equal. There's the soft ghost, where someone gradually reduces contact until it fades to nothing. There's the hard ghost, where someone vanishes mid conversation without warning. There's the zombie ghost, where someone disappears only to return weeks or months later as if nothing happened. Each type speaks a different dialect of the same language, and each one tells you something different about the person behind the silence. The soft ghost is the language of cowardice dressed up as kindness. The person convinces themselves they're being gentle by slowly fading away rather than having an honest conversation. They'll take longer to respond to messages, give shorter replies, and gradually become less available. They tell themselves this is more humane than a direct rejection, but what they're really doing is prolonging the agony while protecting themselves from an uncomfortable moment. The hard ghost speaks the language of panic. Something triggered their fight or flight response, and they chose flight. Maybe you said something that scared them. Maybe they realized they were catching feelings and couldn't handle it. Maybe they remembered they have a girlfriend. The hard ghost is often impulsive, driven by immediate emotional overwhelm rather than calculated avoidance. The zombie ghost speaks the language of convenience. These are the people who ghost you when something better comes along, only to return when that something better doesn't work out. They're fluent in the art of keeping people as backup options while never having to commit to anything real. Their silence doesn't mean you're forgotten, it means you're being stored for later use. Understanding these different types isn't just academic, it's practical intelligence that can save you months of confusion and self doubt. When you know what type of ghost you're dealing with, you can predict their behavior and protect your emotional energy accordingly. But here's where it gets really interesting. The language of ghosting isn't just about romantic relationships, it appears in friendships, professional relationships, family dynamics, and even online communities. The same psychological principles apply across all contexts. People ghost their friends when they outgrow them. They ghost their colleagues when they find better opportunities. They ghost their families when they can't handle the emotional complexity of those relationships. The common thread is always the same: avoidance of emotional labor. Ghosting is what happens when someone decides that the effort required to maintain a relationship, or even end it properly, isn't worth the perceived benefit. It's a cost benefit analysis where you come out on the losing side, and the ghoster doesn't even have the courtesy to show you the math. What makes this particularly cruel is that ghosting leaves the other person in a state of ambiguous loss. You're grieving someone who isn't actually gone. You're trying to find closure for a relationship that never officially ended. You're left with questions that may never be answered and a silence that grows louder with each passing day. This is why learning the language of ghosting is so crucial. It's not about becoming cynical or defensive. It's about developing the emotional intelligence to recognize when someone is preparing to disappear, the self awareness to understand why it affects you so deeply, and the wisdom to know how to respond in a way that protects your peace of mind. The truth is, ghosting says nothing about your worth and everything about the ghoster's character. But knowing this intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. The language of ghosting is designed to make you doubt yourself, to make you wonder if you're too much or not enough. It's a form of gaslighting that happens in silence, and it's devastatingly effective. But what if I told you that the silence itself is speaking? What if every unanswered message, every ignored call, every moment of radio silence is actually a confession? The ghoster is telling you exactly who they are. You just need to learn how to listen to what they're not saying. Here's the thing about emotional avoidance, it always leaves traces. Think of it like a crime scene where the perpetrator tried to clean up but missed a few crucial pieces of evidence. The ghoster believes they're making a clean escape, but they're actually creating a detailed psychological profile of themselves with every moment of silence. Let me paint you a picture. Sarah matched with David on a dating app. For 3 weeks, they texted constantly. Good morning messages, late night conversations, shared memes, inside jokes. They made plans for a weekend trip. David even introduced her to his friends over video chat. Then, the night before their planned trip, David vanished. No explanation, no cancellation, no goodbye, just empty air where a person used to be. Sarah's first instinct was to blame herself. What did she say wrong? Was she too eager, too needy, too much? But here's what Sarah didn't realize. David's ghosting wasn't about her at all. It was about his pattern. 3 weeks is exactly how long it takes for most people to start developing real feelings. David ghosted her right at the moment when things were about to get real, because real intimacy terrifies him more than hurting someone he claims to care about. The timing wasn't coincidental. The weekend trip wasn't just a plan, it was a test. And when David realized he might actually have to show up emotionally, he chose to disappear physically instead. His silence was screaming one clear message: I am not ready for anything real, and I would rather hurt you than face my own emotional limitations. This brings us to one of the most important aspects of ghosting language, the pre ghost phase. Every ghost leaves warning signs before they disappear. The problem is, we're usually too invested in the relationship to notice them. We're reading the words they're saying instead of listening to the words they're not saying. Watch for the shift in energy. The ghoster starts creating distance before they create silence. Their responses become more generic, less personal. They stop asking questions about your life. They stop sharing details about theirs. They begin treating your conversations like a chore rather than a connection. They're already halfway out the door. They just haven't told you yet. Here's another pattern. The ghoster often starts testing your boundaries in subtle ways. They'll leave you on red for longer periods, then return with a casual message as if nothing happened. They're conditioning you to accept their absence while measuring how much neglect you'll tolerate. It's like they're slowly turning down the volume on your relationship until it reaches complete silence. But the most telling sign is the way they handle conflict or difficult conversations. A future ghoster will avoid any topic that requires emotional intelligence or vulnerability. They'll change the subject when you try to talk about feelings. They'll deflect serious conversations with humor or distractions. They're showing you that when things get challenging, they don't stick around to work through it. They disappear. The language of ghosting also has its own vocabulary of false promises. I've just been really busy lately. Let's definitely hang out soon. I'm going through some stuff right now. These aren't explanations, they're stall tactics. The ghoster is buying time while they figure out how to vanish without looking like the bad guy. They're giving you hope while secretly planning their exit strategy. What's particularly insidious is how ghosting exploits our natural human need for closure. We're wired to seek resolution, to understand what went wrong, to learn from our mistakes. Ghosting deliberately denies us this basic psychological need. It's like reading a book where someone ripped out the last chapter, or watching a movie that cuts to black right before the ending. Your brain keeps trying to write the conclusion, and that's exactly what the ghoster is counting on. They want you to fill in the blanks with your own insecurities. They want you to create the ending where you're the villain and they're the victim who had no choice but to escape. They want you to gaslight yourself so they don't have to take responsibility for their actions. The silence is designed to make you complicit in your own emotional abandonment. But here's where understanding the language becomes powerful. Once you recognize these patterns, you can't unsee them. You start noticing the warning signs in real time. You begin to understand that someone's inability to communicate directly is information about them, not about you. You realize that ghosting is actually a gift. It's someone showing you their true character before you invest any more of your emotional energy in them. Think about it this way. Would you rather date someone who ghosts you after 3 weeks or someone who ghosts you after 3 years? Would you rather have a friend who disappears when you need them most or someone who tells you upfront that they can't handle emotional intimacy? The ghoster is actually doing you a favor by revealing their limitations early in the relationship. The language of ghosting becomes even more complex when you factor in social media. The modern ghost doesn't just disappear, they perform their disappearance. They'll ignore your messages while posting stories on Instagram. They'll avoid your calls while tweeting about their day. They'll leave you in digital limbo while maintaining an active online presence that you can see but not access. This creates a unique form of psychological torture. You're not just dealing with someone's absence, you're dealing with their selective absence. They're available to everyone except you. They're communicating with the world while maintaining radio silence in your direction. It's like being individually blocked from someone's life while watching them live it publicly. The social media ghost is speaking a particularly cruel dialect. They're saying, I don't want to deal with you, but I want you to know I'm fine without you. They're creating a performance of indifference while simultaneously ensuring you're aware of their indifference. It's ghosting with an audience, and you're both the victim and the viewer. But perhaps the most sophisticated form of ghosting language is the breadcrumb trail. These are the ghosters who don't disappear completely. They just reduce their presence to the bare minimum required to keep you hoping. A like on your photo every few weeks. A brief response to your message after days of silence. A casual hey that leads nowhere. The breadcrumb ghoster is fluent in the art of emotional manipulation. They're giving you just enough attention to prevent you from moving on, but not enough to constitute a real relationship. They're keeping you as an option while exploring other possibilities. They're speaking the language of maybe, and maybe is the cruelest word in the dating dictionary. Understanding this particular dialect is crucial because breadcrumb ghosters are the most difficult to identify and the most damaging to your emotional well being. They never fully disappear, so you never get the closure of a complete ending. They never fully commit, so you never get the satisfaction of a real relationship. They exist in the gray area between presence and absence, keeping you trapped in relationship purgatory. The breadcrumb trail speaks the language of false hope. Every small interaction feels like a sign that things might change, that they might come back, that you might finally get the relationship you thought you were building. But the breadcrumbs aren't leading you home. They're leading you in circles, and the ghoster knows it. Now, here's the part that will change everything: learning to speak ghost back to them. Once you understand their language, you can respond in a way that either forces them to communicate properly or reveals their true intentions immediately. The key is to match their energy without matching their cruelty. When someone starts breadcrumbing you, don't chase the crumbs. Acknowledge their minimal effort with equally minimal investment. If they send a hey after a week of silence, you respond with the same energy they're giving you. You're not being petty. You're speaking their language fluently. You're showing them that you understand the game they're playing, and you're not interested in being the only one who doesn't know the rules. The most powerful response to ghosting isn't anger or desperation, it's understanding. When someone ghosts you, they're expecting you to chase them, to double text, to demand explanations. They're counting on your confusion and hurt to validate their decision to disappear. But when you respond with clarity instead of chaos, you flip the script entirely. Here's what I mean. Instead of sending multiple messages asking what went wrong, you send one final message that demonstrates you understand exactly what's happening. Something like, I can see you've chosen not to continue this conversation, and I respect that choice. I wish you well. Then you disappear from their life as completely as they disappeared from yours. This response does something remarkable. It gives you back your power while simultaneously making them confront their own behavior. They can't frame you as the crazy person who wouldn't take a hint. They can't tell themselves they were protecting you from a difficult conversation. They have to face the fact that you saw through their strategy and chose to respond with dignity instead of drama. But the real mastery comes from preventing ghosting before it happens. Once you're fluent in the language, you can identify potential ghosters early in the relationship and adjust your investment accordingly. You start noticing the people who avoid emotional depth, who deflect serious conversations, who create distance when things get real. You don't try to fix them or prove your worth. You simply calibrate your expectations to match their demonstrated capacity for connection. This isn't about becoming cynical or closed off. It's about becoming emotionally intelligent enough to recognize when someone is showing you their limitations. It's about understanding that not everyone who enters your life is equipped to stay, and that's information you can use to protect yourself without becoming bitter. The language of ghosting ultimately teaches us something profound about human nature. Some people will choose the discomfort of hurting others over the discomfort of honest communication. They'll choose temporary convenience over long term integrity. They'll choose their own emotional safety over basic human decency. And once you understand this, you realize that being ghosted isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a revelation of their character. Here's the truth that nobody talks about: the people who ghost you are doing you a favor. They're removing themselves from your life before you waste more time on someone who lacks the emotional maturity to handle real relationships. They're showing you their conflict resolution skills, their communication style, and their capacity for empathy all at once. They're giving you crucial information about who they are when things get difficult. The silence stops being about you and starts being about them. The absence becomes a presence, the presence of someone who just told you everything you need to know about their character without saying a word. And once you can read that language fluently, you'll never again wonder what you did wrong when someone ghosts you. You'll know exactly what they did wrong, and you'll be grateful they showed you who they really are before you invested any more of your precious emotional energy in them. The language of ghosting is cruel, but it's also honest. It strips away all pretense and reveals the truth about someone's emotional capacity. And in a world full of people who will tell you what you want to hear while planning their exit strategy, maybe silence is the most honest communication of all. So the next time someone ghosts you, don't ask what you did wrong. Ask what they just told you about themselves. Listen to their silence. Read their absence. Understand their language. Because once you're fluent in the language of ghosting, you'll never again be caught off guard by someone who chooses disappearance over dialogue. You'll see it coming, understand what it means, and most importantly, you'll know exactly how to respond. The silence isn't empty, it's full of information. You just need to know how to listen to what someone isn't saying. And now you do.